They often say, be careful what you wish for, because desire can be danger wrapped in perfection. What is seen on the inside most times cannot be measured by what lies deep inside. When one is driven by the insatiable need for perfection, it often blinds them from looking deep within. For Anita, perfection in a man was beauty, fashion, wealth, the ability to spend generously on her, masculine in every form, a hopeless romantic, a perfect gentleman, and of course, perfect in speech. Ah, the list was endless. She had always wanted someone she could show to the world proudly and brag about to her friends. Right from when Anita was 18, she always knew what she wanted in a man. While her peers settled for just about any man that came their way, Anita took her time with screening and selecting. Every date, conversation, and proposal came with deep scrutiny from Anita, and at the end of the day, there was always something missing. By the time she got to 25, her parents were already worried that Anita hadn't found not a single man that she remotely liked. A lot of men were coming because Anita was very attractive, but guess what? She always turned them down. Time doesn't wait for any man, oh, Anita. It is even more impatient when it comes to a woman. Her parents tried to advise her, but Anita wants what she wants, and no one would be able to talk her out of it. Her parents arranged a date with the son of one of their friends and encouraged Anita to go out with him. Who knows? She might end up liking him, and they strongly believed that he would make a good husband because he was raised right. His name was Ruben. From the pictures of him that were shown to Anita, he looked handsome and charming, just the way she liked them. They also told her that he was into tech, and so far, he seemed successful as he drove his own car. Hmm, impressive. It wasn't difficult to talk Anita into going out with him because she already liked what she saw and heard about Ruben. And so, she got dressed in one of her beautiful dinner gowns and went to meet Ruben at the restaurant that she had picked out herself. Ruben already told her what he was wearing, so it was easy to spot him when she arrived at the restaurant. Goodness, he's truly charming, Anita said to herself the moment she spotted him. Anita was happy that she agreed to meet with Ruben and her hopes were already high. Maybe this is the end of the search for me, she told herself as she walked majestically towards him. Ruben stood up and smiled brightly when he saw Anita approaching the table he had reserved for their date. Ooh, and a charming smile too. Anita, as always, was already taking notes of his features. Being that she had a bucket full of lists on what she wanted in a man, she was very observant and keen whenever she met a man. Sometimes, Anita noticed those small things the first time she meets a man, something that most women wouldn't even notice, like the arrangement of his teeth, his fingers, and how neat his nails are. And if there was even a spot of stain on what he was wearing, Anita's inquisitive eyes would catch it. Even before she got to the table, she was already impressed with what she was seeing, and for Anita, appearance always motivated her interest. She got to Ruben and they exchanged pleasantries. Ruben greeted her like a gentleman would greet a lady. But Anita noticed one thing as they sat down. Guess what? He didn't pull out her chair. Was a man a gentleman if he didn't know how to pull out a chair for a woman to sit? Anyway, Anita was already here, so she might as well sit to the end of the date. First, they started with little details about each other, just so that they could get to know each other. But when their orders came, Anita noticed that Ruben's order had too much sugar in it. In her books, a man shouldn't be consuming too much sugar, right? As they conversed, Anita noticed one or two errors in his sentences, and she almost couldn't ignore that. Hearing Ruben make grammatical mistakes was like forcing her to listen to a terrible artist singing. By the time the conversation was over, Anita was sure she didn't want to date Ruben. Ruben was nice to offer to drop Anita off with his car, but he made everything worse when he didn't open the car door for her. She wondered what her parents were thinking when they said that he was raised properly. All Anita could see was a man who couldn't treat a woman in a gentlemanly way. On the way, Ruben talked about how much he enjoyed her company and looked forward to seeing her again. Anita nodded with a forced smile, but deep down, she knew that she was never going to see Ruben again. And she was also done with her parents, trying to matchmake her with the sons of their friends. When Anita got home, her parents eagerly asked how the date went. They were certain that with Anita's impossible demands, he would fit in just fine. However, they were disappointed to hear from Anita how flawed Ruben was. They tried to tell her that it didn't matter as long as Ruben was not a bad person and he could take care of her. It was almost foolish to see a woman who turned down a man simply because he didn't draw out her chair or open the car door for her. Who does that? Her parents tried to talk her into giving Ruben a second chance, But Anita was adamant with her verdict, and that took her right back to searching for her perfect Prince Charming, much to her parents' dismay. Please like and subscribe for more interesting and entertaining stories. Anita was willing to wait. She would not even settle for who was near perfect. As long as he didn't tick all the boxes, he was off the list for Anita. At some point, her parents gave up on hooking her up with the sons of their friends after several failed attempts. They also stopped trying to make her understand that God didn't create any perfect man or woman. They simply let her continue in her search. Then, Anita met someone on Facebook. When she got his friend request, she scrolled through his profile to see if he was worth being her friend, and what Anita saw was impressive. It was almost like Ruben, who seemed physically perfect. His name was Bayo. Everything about his social media page indicated that he was a responsible and successful man. It wasn't enough to conclude that he would make the perfect match for Anita, being that there were still other attributes. But, from what Anita could see, she was willing to give him a trial. Bayo sent her a message and Anita responded. From there, they started communicating. He seemed very eloquent in the words that he typed. As they chatted, Anita kept waiting for him to say something wrong, maybe a misspelled word or a wrong sentence, but he never did. They continued chatting for weeks, and Anita was patient. However, it got to 2 months, and she began to worry when she would ever see Bayo. It was important for her, especially as she was already growing some form of attachment to him. If there was one thing Anita knew, it was not to fall in love with someone on social media unless a physical meeting had been had. He lives in my city, so why hasn't he suggested meeting up? Anita asked herself worriedly. By the 4th month, and Bayo hadn't asked to see Anita, she couldn't hold it in any longer. She brought up the suggestion of meeting up, and Bayo said that he had also been thinking of it. Actually, he had been dying to meet Anita physically, only that he had been out of town for business for a while now. Well, Anita believed. Meanwhile, Anita went to the supermarket one day to get some groceries for her parents, and while she was picking out the items she needed, a man who was also shopping from the other aisle began to exchange eye contact with Anita. Anita couldn't deny that the man was good looking and he had a muscular body like that of a gym instructor. The moment their eyes started to connect with each other's, she became attracted. Even though she and Bayo now seemed like they were dating, because of how much time they spent with each other, Anita wouldn't limit her options. Besides, until she set eyes on Bayo physically, she would keep her options open, of course. Talk about not putting all of one's egg in one basket. This supermarket stranger had a charming smile that could sweep any woman off her feet as well, and Anita flashed him hers too. It was as though they were communicating with each other with their eyes and smiles. He began to walk towards Anita, and Anita anticipated the kind of conversation that they would have. Then he got close and said, "Hello." And it was as though all the gutters in the city had been opened. His mouth odor hit her even before the word did, and she almost passed out. How could a man like this have such disgusting breath? Without even responding to him, Anita picked up what she had bought, paid at the counter, and hurried out of the supermarket as though she was being chased by a ghost. He tried to catch up with Anita, but she was too fast trying to get away from him. Even though Anita had spent about 25 minutes of her time admiring a stranger, she was glad that he came over to talk to her. She didn't care if he was the best man alive. That mouth odor was something that she couldn't stand even for a second. Anita went back to talking to Bayo, but still, he didn't propose for them to see. He began to tell Anita of the feelings he had developed for her, but Anita held back, still standing on her policy of meeting him before she could decide whether or not he was fit for her. What if he had a mouth odor, just like that stranger at the supermarket? It was better safe than sorry. 2 weeks later, Anita visited a restaurant to get lunch, and while she was there, guess what happened? She sighted someone familiar. Almost immediately, she recognized him as Bayo. Hold on a second. Didn't he say he wasn't in town? Well, Anita decided to give him the benefit of the doubt by assuming that he only recently just got back. Bayo saw her too and they smiled at each other. He was very much the same as the man she had been chatting with for months, and Anita was happy. She went over to his table to say hi, but she was disappointed that he didn't rise to his feet, talk more of pulling out the chair for her. Bayo spoke and his breath was not just fresh, but his tone was charming. Thank goodness for that one, at least. Anita was still wondering about the fact that he didn't act gentlemanly when she got to him when the worst hit her. By the time Bayo stood up to leave, Anita noticed that his legs were not real. They were prosthetic legs. Anita was horrified. She realized now why Bayo never initiated a physical meetup. not that he traveled. Bayo tried to explain how he lost his legs, but Anita wasn't paying attention. Without wasting another second, she grabbed her handbag and hurried out of the restaurant, and because she wasn't looking at where she was going, she ran into someone, almost knocking him down. Please subscribe to get more interesting stories like this. By the time Anita raised her head to apologize to the person that she had almost knocked down in her haste, she was fully captivated by the sight in front of her. He was tall with broad shoulders and deep brown eyes, and he had the body of a male model. Even as Anita stared at him, she could smell his expensive perfume. There was just something about him that took her breath away. Anita had met a lot of attractive men over the years, but this one topped the chart. Until he cleared his throat, Anita didn't get a hold of herself. She could not believe that she was staring at a stranger this way. Anita apologized to him for not looking where she was going. He opened his mouth and said that he wasn't offended, and Anita stared at his perfect dentition. In her head, she was already hailing God for such a flawless creation. Fortunately for Anita, he was interested in interacting with her. He introduced himself as Charles, and that he would like to keep communicating with Anita. Maybe it was fate that brought them together, but because he was also in a hurry, he couldn't stay to chat. So, he brought out the most expensive phone that Anita had ever seen to take her number. Anita walked out of that restaurant with the happiest smile she had ever had in a really long time. She didn't know Charles's personality yet, but she was definitely enchanted. He looked like a romance novel character, and Anita couldn't stop thinking about his eyes until she got home. For the rest of that day, he didn't call. But guess who did? Bayo. Anita had completely forgotten that someone like him existed, and who would blame her? Meeting someone like Charles only happened once in a lifetime, and his presence alone was capable of wiping out the memory of another man. She didn't take Bayo's calls. Then, Bayo sent her a message, saying that he was worried about how Anita would feel about his legs, and that he was waiting for the right time to reveal himself to her. He never imagined that they would run into each other. Bayo told Anita that his disability meant nothing because he was capable of walking, and that he was just as efficient as other men. Besides, it wasn't as though he had prayed for an accident that would take his legs to happen to him. Bayo, in his message, also told Anita that he really liked her, and that if she could just give him a chance, just one chance, she would find out for herself how much of an amazing man he was. Anita didn't respond to his messages. After reading all of them, she deleted Bayo's number and blocked him everywhere. Even if she hadn't met Charles, Anita still wouldn't have given Bayo a chance. The man that she would end up with must be a complete man in every sense. She didn't wait all these years and turn down a lot of men for someone like Bayo. People would laugh at her. For 2 days, Anita waited for Charles's call like the coming of the Messiah. But guess what? He didn't call. Her heart was broken. If she had known, she would have taken his number as well. Anita couldn't stop thinking about him. Unfortunately, she had no idea how to find him. The day that Charles called, Anita literally danced around the living room like the happiest child in the world. He explained that he didn't call because he had been busy. After spending time on the phone with him, Anita got to realize that he didn't live in the same state as she, but he was responsible and successful. There was not a single grammar out of place with Charles. The very next day, guess what he did? Charles ordered some expensive gifts for Anita. She was completely blown away. None of the men that she had ever met treated her like that. Every single day after that, Charles sent her thoughtful and expensive gifts. Then they spent most of their time professing their love for each other on the phone. It was easy to fall in love with a man like Charles, who not only had a room full of promises, but also sent Anita gifts every single day. Who wouldn't fall in love with him? And on some days, he sent her some money too. Everything that Anita had ever dreamt of in a man, Charles had it. He was the perfect man that she had been looking for all her life. It was a good thing they started off by seeing each other, because Anita could also proudly add physical attraction to the list of things that he ticked. Anita wanted to stick her tongue out on everyone who had tried to discourage her from waiting for her perfect gentleman, including her parents. But she was patient. In the day, Anita was consumed by Charles's love and charm, and in the night, she dreamt of him. Charles was on her mind when she went to bed and when she woke up. By the 3rd week, Anita was still floating in the euphoria of Charles's love. Then, he told Anita that he was flying into their state just to see her for the first time after their initial meeting. Anita was overwhelmed with joy. But what she didn't know was that Charles had a bigger surprise for her. After Charles landed, he sent a car to go and pick her up. Anita was always looking beautiful, so her appearance wasn't a problem. As much as Anita tried to get Charles to tell her where he was taking her, Charles refused. Then she was led to the rooftop of the biggest and most luxurious restaurant in the city. There, Charles had someone set up the most beautiful and romantic proposals ever. Anita was astonished. With cameras all over and orchestras playing the most melodious tunes, Charles got down on one knee and asked Anita to marry him. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. Anita gave Charles a resounding yes. Why wouldn't she? The engagement ring with a big rock was enough for any woman to say yes to Charles. After she did, Charles showered her with more gifts and they sipped on some very expensive wine while Charles talked about their wedding. Anita couldn't stop thinking about how lucky she got. She was glad that she didn't listen to naysayers who told her that perfect men didn't exist. They didn't only exist, but one of them has just given Anita the most romantic proposal that any of the women in her neighborhood had ever witnessed. Most people envied her and wished they were half as lucky, while the people who discouraged her hid their faces in shame and disappointment. But Anita's parents were a little worried. She had only known Charles for 3 weeks and now he was already talking about getting married. Charles already stated that he wanted a quick but lavish wedding, anything within the space of 2 weeks after the engagement. Money was not the problem as he had more than enough to spend. 2 weeks is too short to plan a wedding, especially a lavish wedding. But aside from that, we are yet to get acquainted with Charles's family, Anita's parents told her. Usually, they were supposed to see Charles's family first and get to know them before they even started talking about a wedding. It would have been easier if Charles was from their community, but since he wasn't, they needed to be sure that they were giving Anita out to good hands. However, Anita dismissed all their worries. She told them that they would get to meet his family on the day of the wedding. What was important was that Charles wanted to marry her and he was willing to cover all the cost. We still think it is too fast, eh? 3 weeks is not enough to get to know someone or be sure about them, they insisted. But Anita was adamant. She reminded her parents of how they were worried about remaining unmarried because of her preference. And now that someone who ticked all her boxes had finally come forth, they wanted to spoil things for her. Anita told them not to worry. She could vouch for Charles, but Anita was blinded by the love that Charles showed her and the gifts he showered on her. He was even better than all the previous men that she had met, because after she said yes and they sat down to drink wine, Charles pulled out a chair for her. Then, on their way out, he opened the doors for her. What more could she want? Anita's parents had no choice but to swing into preparation, and in less than 2 weeks, everything was ready, just as Charles wanted it. The wedding was even bigger than what Anita ever dreamed of for herself. Yes, she had expectations, but Charles exceeded them all. Everyone who attended the wedding couldn't stop talking about it. Right after the wedding, Charles flew Anita out of the country for their honeymoon. Aww, he even took her shopping and they toured the country together. Anita was in La La Land. When they got back, Anita was impressed by Charles's home. It was even bigger and more beautiful than the pictures he showed her, and more so, she wouldn't have to do any chores or cook, as there were domestic workers around to handle everything. Wow, Anita couldn't have asked for more. But the next morning, everything changed right before Anita's eyes. As early as possible, Charles called her into his home office to lay down her job description. The only reason she wouldn't be doing any chores or stressing herself with cooking was because he needed her beautiful and fit for something else. And that was the exact reason he married her. Anita was sure that whatever Charles had in mind, it would sit well with her, but she wasn't prepared for what Charles explained next. He told Anita that he married her so that she would be making money for him. Charles had a lot of prominent men in the country, politicians, businessmen, commissioners, you name it, who wanted her body for themselves. Charles revealed to Anita that he had known her prior to the day they accidentally met at the restaurant and that everything he did after was planned. Anita opened her mouth in shock. But Charles wasn't concerned about her shock. He told her that the first client would be here anytime soon. Once he was done satisfying himself with Anita, they would be paid handsomely. Anita stood up vehemently and told Charles that she would never do the crazy thing he was asking of her. Charles asked Anita about all the money that he had spent on her. How do you intend to pay me back for the gifts, the money, the proposal, the lavish wedding, and the honeymoon? Eh? Charles wanted all his money back and even more, and he made Anita understand that she didn't have a choice. Anita thought that it was a joke until a bulky older man arrived in his convoy. Charles told Anita to go and freshen up and await the man in their bedroom. That was just the first client for the day. In the bathroom, Anita thought of her life and the foolish decision that she had made. If she left, people would mock her. But would she prefer staying here with Charles in a completely different state as a trafficked victim for countless intercourse with strange men? The mere thought of it made Anita horrified, and she knew that she had to do something about it. While Charles negotiated the fee with the man in their living room, Anita escaped through the window and ran out of the house. She wasn't beautifully dressed as always, and she was without a penny. She didn't even know how she would get to her parents in another state. But Anita took her lessons and ran for her dear life without looking back. Please like, drop a comment and subscribe for more interesting and entertaining stories like this.